Issue 83. We start out with Eggman telling Grimer from camera footage that Sonic can't swim. When Grimer points out that Sonic sometimes breathes in air bubbles to keep himself from drowning, he's told to invent something to turn the trick against him. You mean like bubbles that only look like air bubbles but are actually poisonous? I doubt he'll be allowed to do that by the comic, and even if he did, Sonic would probably only very briefly get inconvenienced by it, with no long-term health effects, like with Knuckles in the poison plant. I know this might be an immersion-breaking thing for me being so cynical all the time, but it's better than me just boringly explaining the whole plot with no commentary about it, and these reviews are more like live commentaries like Let's Plays professional reviews. It'd be pointless if I didn't point out every problem I had with it. Days later, Tails and Sonic respond to a distress call in Labyrinth Zone. And when Tails warns Sonic that it's a trap, being allowed to be smart, Sonic calls him Pixel Brain for being smart and says that he knows that already and is expecting excitement. When some robots shoot fire at them, a spider badnik hangs in front of Sonic and punches him into the water. Since when do spiders punch? Sonic thinks about how he hates getting wet, as I appreciate how this comic understood Sonic was hydrophobic before Archie did. And he sees some robots ganging up on him, with the water slowing him down. He goes up to an air bubble, and then Grimer shows how stupid he was because rather than air bubbles that are actually poisonous, Sonic got trapped in an air bubble like in Sonic Triple Trouble. It turns out that it transformed from air into a tough plastic force field around Sonic that he can't break free from. As Eggman spies on him with the camera, Sonic rolls the bubble along the ground trying to use the spike from a previous badnik to burst the bubble. I don't see the point of tediously calling every single badnik in this comic by their actual names in the reviews. To me, they're just robots for Sonic to destroy in one hit. Predictably, since this isn't the end of the story, Sonic can't pop the bubble with the spike. Well, go figure, Sonic, you couldn't do it with your spines either. Meanwhile, after fighting some robots off-screen, Tails is immediately tied up by some goop shot from a badnik because he's not allowed to be useful. Sonic then reveals that the bubble shrinks as he uses up the air in it, so he has to hurry and escape. He wants to reach the debris from the other badnik, pushing his hand to the bubble plastic like the glove, and he uses the sharp debris to climb the wall, creatively getting himself out of the water, and coincidentally right in front of Tails as he's surrounded by robots. Sonic jumps out of the way of a heat blast, which melts the bubble. Sonic grabs one robot by the limbs and sends it at the other end to get it destroyed, and the story ends with a few panels being wasted redundantly by Eggman. In the next story, Knuckles dives underwater to try to poke holes in the octopus-shaped mecha of a bounty hunter called Captain Claw, with Knuckles looking forward to humiliating him. Then he gets humiliated instead because it turns out he gets electrocuted by touching the mecha, and he swims towards it again angrily instead of dying from being electrocuted underwater because I guess he has a lot of rings that let him feel pain despite not actually being injured. Somehow. He gets knocked away to the land, climbs up to some land for time for plan making, and it crumbles and he wishes that he had a weapon. I wonder if he'll get one. He keeps running along the land as it crumbles beneath him, and eventually the land makes itself be used as a weapon to defeat the mecha. And Knuckles for some reason thinks nobody would believe that it was him who defeated him. I mean, it's not like there's cameras recording it, but still, he should be known as a badass. Fortunately, the chest containing documents about Echidnas is safe, which is good because it would have really sucked to make the whole story arc about getting it pointless if it just sank just out of an excuse to not let Knuckles learn more about his people. Captain Claw tells him that because he destroyed the Octonaut, they're trapped forever, and then Knuckles tells him to row the floating Octonaut to safety as he complains about being mistreated when no, he's just doing what they have to do to survive. Wouldn't he have decided to do this on his own eventually to survive anyways? He's just looking for an excuse to complain. In the next story, Tails flies over the Grim Zone, which is full of factories and used to be all fields, and a robot knocks him out of the sky, and he has to create a small tornado with his sails below him to catch himself in his fall. He lands and dodges a laser from a robot who wants revenge against him for supposedly making him who he is. Tails runs and flies away and points out that it was Eggman who turned him into a badnik. The badnik says that Eggman just made him more efficient, and he grabs him to try to destroy him. So, well, one, he was mad at Tails for making him the way he is, but then he says that he likes being a badnik? Which is it? So he was just reprogrammed to think like this, I guess. He trips and somehow Tails gets away, spins his tails to create a tornado below him again to save himself from a potential head injury. Tails avoids a laser while flying, hovers in place spinning his tails below him, and taunts the robot that he'd be better at hitting him if he stood still, calling him useless. He then dodges the predictable laser by flying away, and the laser makes a building collapse onto the Badnik, who is revealed to be Morphia now that her helmet's gone. But I thought Morphia would blame Shortfuse and Techno for her being turned into a Badnik, since they were the people she fought last. I mean, I can only remember one time when she dealt with Tails, and it was Sonic who defeated her. Besides, why didn't Tails recognize and point out that he was hearing a girl's voice and assume it was her? He notices how sad she looks, and sees her cry about how Eggman will be angry with her for failing again, and Tails tries to reassure her that Eggman's always angry. Morphia says that she used to think Eggman was wonderful for no reason until he took away her shapeshifting powers. I mean, at least explained that Grimer programmed her to think that Eggman was wonderful, and being in love with him was an unintentional side effect. She calls him cruel and refuses to work for him again. She surprisingly actually means that. I mean, I haven't read all of Sonic the Comic online, but she never works with him again. Like, I had no reason to assume at this point that she wouldn't just go back to him because status quo is God and the comic takes no risk. I mean, like, a shape-shifting hero could be pretty cool, but that's when the status quo comes in, because we're never going to see her be a shape-shifting hero. So it kind of feels like her quitting is like just the waste of a really cool villain. And she doesn't even have to make the plots for the main heroes be too easy with her hero-ness. She could be fighting in a different part of the world. So it's not like it'd be a storybreaker power for the hero's side, because we wouldn't have to see stories about her all the time. Then Morphia panics that she's changing even though she lost her powers. And she suddenly changes into a nicer looking Bearmobian girl, so Eggman won't be able to track her down, letting her start a new life. This came out of complete nowhere. Why would she have her powers still? I was worried at first that she had activated an automatic anti-traitor system by saying she won't work for Eggman anymore, and that she'd be forced to shapeshift into something lethal, which was making me confused about why Tails just jumped to the conclusion that the change would be for the better because the writer wanted him to be right. I'm glad this happened instead, but it doesn't make any sense. In the next story, we see a text box saying it's the nerve center of Sonic the Comic activities. Oh, fuck off. A fourth wall breaking story? Please, just about a robot that works for the writers of the comic, trying to leave his humdrum job only to be not happy in other better jobs, and he comes back to his miserable one at the slightest of problems. That's not a good lesson to teach kids. If you can find a job you're happier with, it goes without saying that you should stick to it and not give up at the slightest problem right away. The moral of the story is, give up and know your place. What a waste of comic space that could have gone towards showing us what Morphia did right after the previous story was done. Well, that was fun again. The first story was by Lou Stringer and involved Grimer getting Sonic trapped in an air bubble that forms a plastic outer coating, which is creative but makes no sense. You'd think such a bubble would be made of something other than just air at first, and thus make Sonic breathing in it before it could form into a bubble toxic. Grimer should have made the air bubbles toxic or not had them at all. Instead, he was an idiot so we could have an interesting plot where Sonic eventually uses some robot debris to climb out of the water, and the bubble gets melted away by a robot's fire blast, letting him save Tails. Good thing Tails didn't get the chance to destroy those robots, because otherwise maybe their heat blast was needed to free Sonic, and he would have been trapped longer if they were all destroyed by him, like I would expect at this point. So the message is, it's good that Tails gets kidnapped? The next story is by Nigel Kitchen, and it's about Knuckles running along some land that crumbles onto the Octonaut of the bounty hunter and damages it, letting Knuckles, with his chest of echidna secrets, get rowed back home by Captain Claw, which is amusing. The third story is also by Lou Stringer, and it's about Tails flying to avoid some lasers from the vengeful Morphia, who's mad at him because he's one of her many failures, barely, but not the most recent one. She should have gone after Shortfuse, but I guess Shortfuse wouldn't have shown her compassion and probably convinced her to be good like Tails would. When her helmet is removed and Tails shows her sympathy for feeling sad, I guess that's what finally convinces her that his side is the right one, because he showed her compassion when Eggman never did. Though she never explains that, but I guess that would have been too ham-fisted. And then she magically gets her shape-shifting powers back for no reason. What, did Tails' hidden kitchening power give it back to her subconsciously? I know that kitsunes are known for shape-shifting themselves to trick people into thinking they're humans, but I guess in the Sonic universe, mutant foxes can give that power away. I just wish that was explained. I thought that she was only shape-shifting as a punishment for treason by Eggman, which would have made actual sense. And it's not explained that his device specifically designed to remove her powers didn't work and just pushed it to her subconscious. And the final story, by Lynn Gibbs, is a waste of comic space that's way too meta and could have gone towards showing us what Morphia did right afterwards, like finding a new home for himself. You'd think someone so delusional that she fell in love with Eggman of all people and thought it was amazing wouldn't be capable of realizing he was wrong and turning on him, like she'd be programmed to not be able to. Besides, he's a human, and she's of a different species. So how is she even capable biologically of finding him attractive anyways, even ignoring that he's not handsome? I guess the internet should have explained that it can happen to me, but I still find it hard to believe.